Well, it's been a pretty quiet time in the film industry, not just for visual effects, but it seems for all departments all around the world. And I asked some producers about why is that? And they said many things, but the commonality of what they said was the first half of 2024 is going to be pretty quiet. But the second half, it's got loads of projects that are going to start then. So if you can just hang on, if you can survive until then, good times are going to be coming around again. And of course, I was speaking to some of my visual effects brothers and sisters about their concerns about, about surviving and such, even things like bills, rent, cost of living and all that kind of thing. And it got me thinking, because even when everyone was working, like last year when it was so busy and everyone was working and things were lush and lucrative, this thing came up about having to, pay rent and living expenses being high, and as soon as one project finishes, immediately where's the next one? Because they can't afford a gap, you see. So I thought that was really interesting, and I was thinking these are people working hard, working smart, doing a lot of hours, and it's still a struggle. And then I was thinking, are things just more difficult now than they used to be? And when I say used to be, I'm thinking of like my grandparents' generation. So I'll give you an example of my grandfather, who was a painter and decorator. Off one income, he had a nice house in a nice area. He had 3 kids. He had holidays, cars. It was great. His wife, my nana, she never had to work. She got to do what she loved, which was raising her children, and then subsequently her grandchildren, which I'm one of them. And it was great. And so I did like a little bit of research into what were things like about 70 years ago, my grandfather's time. So in the 1950s. So I found out that the average income in the UK at that time, 1950s, was £9,000 a year. Okay. The average house at that time, decent house, was £2,000. 9,000, 2,000. So that means if you're working your average job, working like normal pedestrian work, not overtime, all that kind of thing, decent, job, that if you just saved for 3 months, you could completely buy a house. No mortgage, like cash buyer. You could buy a house and then the house problem is done, or you could have like a very minuscule mortgage, certainly nothing that was big enough to cause stress in your everyday life, And you could solve the house problem, that's done, and you can get on with the rest of your life then. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. So let's go to 2024. The average income in the UK is £32,000. The average house price is £260,000. That means if you were to save up every penny you earned in that average job of £32,000 a year, it would take about 8 years to buy that house completely. And of course, you're probably paying rent as well, which means it's going to be a lot more than 8 years. So I thought that's just really an incredible difference, isn't it? So 3 months versus 8 years. And what does that mean? What's the lifestyle difference between those? So it means now that in say a couple, it means that they both have to work, probably have to do some overtime as well. That means busy all the time. Also, if you're working that much, like you're both working during the day, who's going to look after the children if they have children? So you've got to pay child support for that. Yep. So that's quite an expense. And then also, if you're working a lot, you're probably not going to have the time to see your parents too much. Our parents aren't going to be around forever. It's good to see our parents, isn't it? And that means that you're probably not going to see them that much. And what happens about when they get old? Who's going to look after them? You can't spend time looking after them because, you're too busy. So they're probably going to go to a care home. And how are you going to pay for the care home? Well, probably your parents are going to have to pay for that by giving the care home their house. And that means at the end of their life, unfortunately at the end of their life, what that means is that that house does not go to you. It goes to the care home. So what that means is that, what used to always happen is that when our parents passed away, they'd hand down things like the house, And then we could either live in that house, that's a big burden gone of buying a house, or we could, sell it and have this big chunk of money, and that means we can start a business. We can use it as a huge leverage, a huge lever to take our next step up in life, take a step up to the next level, rather than basically having no momentum, starting from zero, paying rent all the time. So that kind of takes that away from us as well. So anyway, I thought that was really interesting. Solutions, okay. I've been fortunate enough that I've been and seen a lot of different cultures around the world. And I think the one that has the best solution to this is like the Indian system. So by that I mean there's like one big house. In that one house, you have children, parents, grandparents. So when the parents are out working, the grandparents can look after the children. They feel needed, they feel wanted, they're useful, they can pass on their wisdom. They're not feeling lonely. That solves that problem. And the kids get to see their grandparents, which is awesome. I love to see my nana and granddad. So that's great. Rather than going to like some random person and having to pay the significant cost of childcare, which can be as much as one of the person's income completely. So that solves that problem as well. Plus it probably, because everyone's all together all the time, you haven't got these kind of little microcosms where evil stuff happens because no one can see it, and like domestic violence. It pretty much eliminates that problem as well. Anyway, there's only one downside of that, which means you can't be as freaky, right? You can't get naked, go around all the different rooms of the house doing all sorts with your partner and such. So you can't do that. But overall, I would say that the pros outweigh the cons. So I think that's a pretty good solution. So anyway, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts and your stories on costs of living and such. Anyway, what I can say is that we're near, as I record this, we're near the end of the first half of 2024. So hang on a bit longer and everything should get to be the best it can be with the second half of 2024. Okay.